This week has been the hardest week of this journey so far, and honestly, it's really drained me. I feel completely exhausted at the end of it, and I really didn't expect to feel like this at 6 weeks off Mounjaro. I was actually hoping it was going to start getting easier. If I'm being completely honest, this week has really seriously made me question whether or not I should be going back on Mounjaro, because there have been moments where I've thought to myself, how long can I realistically live like this if every single week is bringing some sort of difficult challenge for me? And this week's not just been one difficult day, it has just been the mental effort of dealing with everything when it comes up, and I think that that is what has really taken it out of me. So I actually had plans to go into the city yesterday and have a really nice day out, have some lunch, have a mooch around the shops. I was really looking forward to it as I work from home, so I'm literally in the house all day. And then when I woke up yesterday morning, I was just drained and I really just could not face going. So instead, I stayed at home, spent the day in the garden, which was lovely, but not the same as what I'd planned. And this has made me realise that this is starting to affect my life again, because I couldn't face doing something that I've been really looking forward to. And that just reminds me of the old me pre-Mounjaro. When I was obese, I would just not do stuff because I was ashamed to go out. If you're new here and haven't seen any of my videos, just for context, I was on Mounjaro for a year. I lost 60 pounds. I love Mounjaro. It worked so well for me, but I had to come off it for financial reasons. I have 3 cats, all brothers, with epilepsy. And then when the price went up in September, I had to make a decision basically between continuing my Mounjaro or paying for my cat's medication. And of course, I chose my cats. So I've now been off Mounjaro for about 6 weeks. If you'd like to see how I get on, then please subscribe and follow along. But this week has definitely been the hardest so far. But what I find really strange is that hunger has not been a problem at all this week. In fact, there was one day where I actually didn't even finish all of my dinner, which is something that I've not done in a really long time since I was on Mounjaro. The hunger that I experienced in the earlier weeks seems to be improving, and I think that's because I've increased my protein intake to about 120 to 140 grams a day, and I'm focusing on eating really balanced meals. So that is really positive, because I think if that's a side effect that I can really control coming off Mounjaro, then that's brilliant, and that's something I can manage. So Monday and Tuesday, absolutely fine. Got up at 5:30, did my workout before work on both days. Everything was quite normal, stable, good days at work, ate well, no problems. Wednesday is when things started to really change. So I didn't sleep very well on Tuesday night. So instead of getting up at my usual time of 5:30 to do my workout, I decided to sleep in, and I woke up at about 10 to 7. So that meant that I'd already missed my workout. It felt like I was on the back foot for the day. I normally start work between sort of 7:30 to 8 o'clock in the morning, so as I work from home. So I got ready, sorted the cats out, went straight into my work day. So literally an hour after getting up, I was at work. Because I was planning to do a workout after work at 4:30 when I finish, I wanted to get my dinner ready beforehand, as I really hate eating late. I don't like eating past 6. This is something that's really been carried on from being on Mounjaro and tasting your dinner the next day, which is just nasty. So at lunchtime, I decided to make my dinner, and I accidentally left the hob on low, which meant by the time I'd realised it, my dinner had burnt. And that immediately triggered a reaction in me where I just thought I just should forget everything, go to the shop, buy a load of rubbish, skip my workout, start again tomorrow. And I hadn't had that thought for a long time, and it was really strong at that moment, and it was exactly how I used to think before Mounjaro. On top of that, I'd had a call with somebody from a utilities company who'd been really rude, which had already put me in a bad mood. And everything just seemed to like really stack up at once, and it would have just been so easy for me to have fallen back into my old habits at that moment. However, I actually stopped myself, which was great. I reminded myself that I had food in the freezer that I could really cook quickly in the air fryer, so I could pop a bit of salmon in the air fryer and cook it from frozen. I've got packets of rice in the cupboard. There's no need to go and derail everything just because I've burnt the dinner, because I've got other food there. So I also thought about how I'd feel the next day if I gave into that urge, especially as I had a really busy day planned on the Thursday, loads of meetings booked into my diary. So I knew that if I gave in, I would feel terrible, I wouldn't sleep properly, and it would potentially ruin the rest of the week. And so instead of going to the shop, I chose to do my workout, which I really wasn't feeling, but I was like, no, we're going to do this anyway. So I decided not to do the full 45 minutes and instead did one of my favourite 30-minute workouts. Just telling myself I just need to move my body, get out of my own head. And then once I started it, within 2 minutes, I was loving it. I ended up doing another 20-minute workout on the end, and I felt really, really good, really proud of myself actually afterwards. I'm pleased that I'd made that decision instead of giving in. I then had a proper dinner, spent the evening chilling, absolutely fine. But that moment made me really realise how close I'd been to slipping back into my old habits, because that's exactly how I used to think. If something went wrong, disrupted my plan, my immediate response would be to give up and start again the next day. And those thoughts came in, and I haven't had those thoughts for over a year. But the difference now is I'm not acting on those thoughts at the moment, which is great. On Mounjaro, those thoughts were just not there. Everything was much, much easier, but now I'm actually having to manage those thoughts. But I feel that I'm winning those internal conversations, which is not something I was able to do before Mounjaro, which is amazing. However, Thursday was another very difficult day. Again, I'd not slept well. I decided to sleep in instead of doing my workout. I got up about 7:15, started work at 7:30, and I literally worked right through up until 4:30. I took 15 minutes from my lunch. I was so busy, and that's on me. I manage my own diary, so that's my own fault. I stayed on track with my food, but I didn't go for my usual walk on my lunchtime break, even though the weather was absolutely gorgeous out there. My diary was just stupid. I'd overloaded it completely, which is something that I need to be really mindful of in the future. And by the time I'd finished work, I was mentally exhausted. And I found myself with my car keys in my hand, ready to drive to the shop and buy food. And I wasn't hungry at all. Not at all. I just wanted comfort. And before Mounjaro, this is something I would have done without hesitation. I'd often finish work, eat a load of food, sit in front of the television and just zone out completely. And that was my way of just coping with like life and just busyness and just stress. And although my day had not actually been stressful, it was very busy and mentally overwhelming. But I used to work in a really demanding job. Even though I was working from home, I'd work 12 to 14 hours a day. I didn't have very good boundaries. I'm in a different situation now where I do have boundaries and I put my boundaries in place. But I need to be really mindful of managing my workload and protecting my time, because on that Thursday, I didn't do it. And I was pulling myself back to my old habits again. And this is something I really have to look at in my life. But instead of giving in, again, as I did Wednesday, I told myself I'm just going to do a quick workout. Within a couple of minutes, that urge had passed again, and I completed a workout, had a really lovely dinner, and again chilled, went to bed nice and early. Friday followed a similar pattern. But again, I didn't give in. Now, if I'd have chosen what was comfortable, I would have gone to the shop, bought loads of food, come home, possibly ordered a takeaway as well, sat in front of the television and just used food as a way to switch off, zone out, just become numb. And that used to be my coping mechanism before I was on Mounjaro, and it created a real temporary kind of feeling of comfort and relaxation. But I know that it doesn't stop there, and it always leads to feeling unwell, ashamed, regretful, horrible afterwards. But those habits have been ingrained in me for years, and I really thought that a year on Mounjaro had got rid of them. And this is the reason why I started Mounjaro, because I wanted to change who I was and how I dealt with things. And now I've actually got to a place where I'm actually liking who I'm becoming, and I really don't want to undo that, but it feels like those habits are really pulling at me and I hate it. But to grow and change, I know that I have to get uncomfortable, and if I keep choosing what feels comfortable in the moment, I will remain the same or go back to the old version of me again. And although I wasn't a bad person before, I want to improve my health. I need to think about my future. I need to think about my longevity. I'm 43 now. It's not a given that I'm going to have good health into my old age, and I need to look after myself, basically. Also this week, it was my cat's 3rd birthday on Tuesday. So I've had them since they were born. I basically took in a stray who was pregnant. I kept her and kept the babies. And they've kind of reminded me exactly why I've made the decision to come off Mounjaro in the first place. And it's because they've all got epilepsy. They've got hereditary epilepsy. And I have to pay for their medication. I've just been up to the vets today, actually, another £180 for 2 months of medication. So I have to prioritise things. Now, I need to be strong and realise that I can choose what I put in my body. My cats need their medicine. There's a difference. I've also realised it wasn't all day, every day that I had these pulls. It was probably about an hour a day on 3 separate days. So in the context of an entire week, that's actually a really, really small amount of time. However, when those moments do happen, they are very intense, they're mentally exhausting, and I have found myself thinking it would be easier just to go back on the Mounjaro. But then I've thought about the reality of that, and I've thought about the cat's meds. They'd have to go without. Also, I haven't ordered from the pharmacy for nearly 3 months now, so I'd have to go back to 2.5 mils. That'd make me go back to the beginning. And that would probably be a good month until I actually noticed the Mounjaro really kicking in. So realistically, I'd be going backwards. My cats wouldn't have their meds. I'd still be hungry and wanting chocolate and whatever. So I'd have to go through all of this again when I came off it. So I have to ask myself whether or not it makes more sense to just keep going and work through this, because I'm 6 weeks off now. And it is hard, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because this week has been so difficult. I think what this week has really shown me is that I really need to protect my sleep and protect my mornings, because the days when this has happened are the days when I've not slept well, where I've not got up on my usual time, I've not done my workout in the morning, and where everything has felt really, really, really rushed first thing. So those are the days where I've been more likely to slip into that mindset of start it all tomorrow. So I think moving forward, protecting my mornings is going to be really important, because when I start the day well, everything else seems to follow suit. So looking back at this week, I can see that it has not been about hunger, and it's not been about a specific craving, which has been very weird. It's been about emotional triggers, it's been about habits, and it's been about coping mechanisms. Exercise has worked every single time to remove that feeling, but I know that I can't rely on it in every situation, so I need to find other coping strategies as well. Now, in my last video, I did say that week 2 was the hardest, and at the time, it generally was. However, this week has actually been harder than week 2, but in a very different way. It's not been constant, but it has been very, very intense when it does happen. So the thoughts are not there all day. They literally tend to come in the afternoon for an hour or so. But when they do, they can become so overwhelming. It's like they take over your body. However, the difference is I'm not acting on those thoughts. So even though this has actually been the hardest week so far, I still have managed to get through it without going back on Mounjaro and without actually falling into those bad habits. I haven't weighed myself this week because I don't want to trigger myself in case I put weight on. So the weighing can happen next week, I think. Still think I'm making progress. Super hard, it really, really is. I appreciate all your support, and I really hope that these videos are helping anybody who might be going through something similar. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.